President Donald Trump says all options are on the table to curb Tehran's push for a nuclear weapon and that time is running short.
I want Iran to be great. The only thing they can't have is a nuclear weapon. They understand that. You know, the people are so incredible in Iran, and they're so smart. They're very smart people. Yeah, if it requires military, we're going to have military.
Let's bring in former U.S. diplomat Brett Bruen, president of the Global Situation Room. Brett, good morning to you.
Good to be with you.
What do you make of that? Was that flattery? The people of Iran are so smart. You know, he says that in one breath, and then the next he says, yes, I'm definitely willing to take military action.
Well, it's classic Trump. On the one hand, you know, he will bash you over the head with rhetoric when things aren't going his way. On the other hand, he'll try to entice you with flattery. And Anna, this is classic also Trump in just fishing around for a deal. One, I have to say, he kind of desperately needs because the situation in Gaza hasn't panned out like promised. The situation in Ukraine hasn't been solved in a day as he promised. So now we're, you know, negotiating face to face with Iranians.
And you warned just a few weeks ago here on MIA that a new nuclear deal was something that would be great, but that we really needed to use even more caution. Do you think it's even possible that, you know, are these talks this weekend going to be fruitful?
Well, I don't think we are going to see much come out of these talks. This is the first time that U.S. and Iranian negotiators have sat face to face in a very long time. You know, we usually do these negotiations through other parties, including when we've had instances, the Russian incident you mentioned at the top of the newscast with an American who was detained there. We've had similar incidents with Iranians, and we worked through the Swiss in the case of Tehran. You know, now we're going to be actually face to face, and there's a feeling out period in diplomacy when you're doing these kinds of negotiations. I was here in London with the former head of MI6, Sir Richard Dearlove. We were chatting about it yesterday, and, you know, he was just saying, look, you've got to get used to how each of you operate because it's different when you're in the room together.
Yeah, I mean, the fear is that a nuclear Iran would be horrible because they just may use it. The United States has recently been targeting the Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen. Brett, how does Tehran's funding of the terror group complicate these talks?
Well, this is the thing you got to bear in mind, because it's not just the nukes. It's also the fact that Iran has all of these proxies, and while they are certainly diminished and diluted in a number of cases, whether it's Hezbollah, Hamas, or the Houthis, they're still there. And we've also seen throughout, you know, the last few decades that Iran can strike out at individuals and at targets around the world. We would call this in the National Security Council an asymmetric threat. And that's where if things are not going Iran's way, we could see some saber rattling or some actual attacks.
And have we seen trade improve there in the Red Sea? You know, it was, what, a month ago or so when we saw the successful strikes there on the Houthis. And then, of course, there was the fallout from the Signalgate chat that was about those strikes. But how has trade been improved or not in that area?
Yeah. Look, I mean, we have to give the Trump administration credit. They have struck back at the Houthis. That has increased the confidence in the maritime industry that they can pass through the Red Sea. At the same time, however, you know, it is really concerning that we do have a situation like Signalgate, where those very classified details are being spilled out into a commercial chat app, hopefully with both, you know, future military operations, but also these diplomatic negotiations. You don't want Russia, you don't want China to have access to what the U.S. is thinking. So I'd like to hope that the National Security Advisor, the Defense Secretary, the Secretary of State are off signal on these discussions.
And we also don't want to have any coordination between our adversaries. I just want to quickly get this in. The Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky saying that he believes 150 Chinese citizens are now fighting for Russia there in Ukraine. What do you make of that headline?
So the key takeaway here, or the key question is going to be, were they there at the direction of the Chinese government, or were they volunteers swept up with the North Koreans or with other foreign fighters? If they were, Anna, that is a really, really concerning, alarming development. And so, you know, watch this space. Let's get more information, and hopefully, you know, things do not escalate between Beijing and Kyiv.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. Also, don't forget to click that red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.